right. Welcome to the HR Tech for Good podcast. It's episode number 3 with the one and only William Tincup. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's sunny and beautiful here in Texas.
What part of Texas are you in?
Arlington, Texas, in between Dallas and Fort Worth.
So you escaped the cold snap recently?
Well, no, we didn't escape it. It hit us pretty hard, but the weather it was really intense. But then by Saturday, it was 70s, and so the sun's out. There's no you couldn't tell that there was ice and snow here last week.
All right.
It's gone. So it was a tough bit because we're just not set up, you know, like a lot of different places in the world, unless you've had the types of storms or whatever, natural disasters or whatever it is, you're not set up for it. Like we're not cold weather people, and so we don't have cold weather stuff. So it
So
was it was quite traumatic, but it's gone.
yeah, good stuff. So are you a media guy? Are you an advisor? Are you an investor? I was looking at your profile and I'm like,
What does
who
this guy
does
do?
what does he do? Where do you sit in this HR tech world?
So half the time I spend during a given week, half the time I spend talking to practitioners about vendors, right? And then half the time I talked with vendors talking about practitioners.
Yeah.
And so I literally sit right in between both. I love the practitioners of both HR and recruiting,
Yeah.
and I love the vendors that serve them. My role at Recruiting Daily is president. I was initially kind of brought in to help build out other multiple revenue streams in the events business and some of this other stuff. Um, but I love talking to both sides, actually.
Yeah.
And so the advising thing is essentially a way for me to work with companies that can't afford me. So, it's like a young company that's just started. They don't have any money, but I really like what they're doing. I'll take a piece of equity
Bit
and
of
then I'll
sweat
advise.
equity.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'll advise them. I've had a number. I've been very fortunate. I've had a number of exits, and it's fun. I love working with entrepreneurs.
All
So,
right. So I'm an entrepreneur. I
yep.
think I've solved it. I fixed it. Oh,
Okay.
right. Hey, that William, he seems to be well connected, right? What's the first question you're asking me? How are you working out if I'm worth your time?
So it's three things. One is the gal or the guy. It's like, do we get on? If it's a conversation where you're fighting uphill the whole time with each other, I think the world is flat. You think the world is round. I think the sky's blue. You think it's purple.
Yeah.
Then you already have this inherent like we're just not going to get on, which means that you're not going to seek my advice,
Yeah.
and I'm going to think it's a pain to give you advice.
Yeah. Just
So
so
the
we're
first
clear before you go on, the world is flat, right?
it's just to to everyone that's in QAnon, it is. Yeah, which I'm wondering about the top of QAnon. So I'm now at the point of like, what do you have to believe in to be the top person in QAnon? Like, how crazy do your beliefs have to be that like you've got to be at the top of the pinnacle of that conspiracy, because it's all conspiracy theories which have been around for hundreds of years. There's nothing new there, but it's like, how crazy do you have to be at the pinnacle? Anyhow, so the world is indeed flat. The second thing, so it's three things. So the first thing is the entrepreneur. The second is the tech, and what I do there is it's like, okay, crack it open. Let's look. Let's play. Like,
Right.
take me into it, and it's a demo, but it's more than a demo because you're really kind of you sign an NDA, so nobody's exposed, and it's like, okay, tell me what's next. Like, I can see it and what it is, and the UI and the UX and the UA, but what's next? What are you really the problem that you're solving? But
Yeah.
what are you solving 6 months from now? So then that's a check mark, and then the last check mark is market opportunity for me.
Yeah.
It's the ability is this a small problem? Is this a medium-sized problem? Is this an immediate problem? Is this a solution searching for a problem? Because you can really like the entrepreneur and really like the tech,
Yeah.
but if the market opportunity isn't there, then it's a timing thing.
Do you have a scoring system, or is it just you just know when
I
you
just
know?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, after doing it this long, you just know.
So I'm a staffing guy,
Hmm.
or a headhunter,
Yep.
as you guys call it, and and I advise some small, like early stage staffing companies and that, and I think I've got a good idea for tech in that space. And somebody came to me the other, as part of this podcast, and we discussed this product, and
Yeah.
he showed me what it did, and he said this fixes a problem for like Coca-Cola and Oracle, and I was like, no, it doesn't. This fixes a problem for executive search, because
Hmm.
I'm in the world every day.
Right.
How do you keep up to date with like what the problem is?
Well, because the problem keeps changing, right?
Yeah.
So the more solutions get, the level of acumen by practitioners is going up.
Hmm.
The level of knowledge and acumen by vendors is going up, and the problems are changing.
Yeah.
So you can look at the problems pre-COVID, and you can look at, like my mom was asking me just the other day, she's like, "What's changed in work because of COVID?" It's like, well, let's just start in alphabetical order, you
Mm.
know. And we went through a bunch of different things, and it blew her mind. And so the problem's always changing. It's a movable object; it keeps moving.
Yeah.
And so, what keeps me up to date is, you got to be aware of things that are changing. So you got to be kind of like putting the feelers out and understanding that other people are seeing things too.
Yeah.
So you can't be arrogant or narcissist enough to think that you can see it all. And even if you ever fall into that trap, then you've already, it's a bridge too far. There's a lot of people looking at a lot of solutions, but if you can tap into what they're learning,
Yeah.
and then you have your own conversations, and then do a lot of demos, look at a lot of technology. The last thing is talk to a lot of practitioners. I mean, just talk to them about, the bit that, is an easy question but yet very difficult. What's keeping you up at night?
Mm.
If you were to ask, and I did this for a number of years, but if you were to ask practitioners that every day, it'd be something different.
Yeah. What if you were to ask 10 practitioners now of similar size firms, what's keeping you up at night? What's the most common response you'd get back?
Hybrid business model. So what is post COVID? What is the new hybrid workplace and hybrid workforce? So workplace being, how do we re-envision what is the office
Yeah.
and think about that differently? And also the workforce being, how do we think of talent differently? From gigs to, all the different ways, the pieces that we can put together, how do we put them together differently with the underpinnings of everything can now be done remote with knowledge workers. Um, Everything can be done remote. So now do we have people that are always going to be remote? People that'll never ever see the office, people that want to go to the office. So on the other extreme, you want to go in the office because that's just the way you're hardwired.
Yeah.
You love being in the office, and being able to serve. So for HR, it's being able to serve all of those folks where they are at the time that they are, and giving them the best chance for success.
Mm. How do you stop HR from buying bad shit?
Well, the best way when talking to HR is to do your due diligence and ask tough questions. So the first thing HR practitioner, when they're thinking about a solution, is that they should reach out to their peer group and do the bit.
Mm.
Go and now seek out all your peers and go, okay, I'm thinking about moving to, we'll just say ADP, make it simple. Thinking about moving from one payroll company to ADP. Who's moved from this company to this company in my peer group? That's a LinkedIn thing. That's a local network. That's also global. You
Mm.
can you can use Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups for this. I'm thinking about going from this to this. Words of wisdom. So one thing is just using your referral network and your peer network in a way. The other is you seek out with when someone's selling you, you seek out the people, not their official references. Like I love getting so we'll use ADP. If I'm in that sales process with ADP and I say, hey, I'd like to talk to some customers, I think that's just normal and natural. They're going to give you people that are going to say nice things about them. But the question that you should be asking is the question that's closer to, of the last 10 deals that said no to you, that got the proposal and that said no to you, I'd like to talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the great salesmen and women will then say, absolutely, here you go. Here's their names and numbers. Give them a call, give them my name, tell them what the bid is, and talk to them. And what you're really looking for is, why did they say no? Like, you got to a proposal, so there obviously it's been some time and energy in getting that far. What ultimately made you say no?
Mm.
And I think you can learn a lot there
Mhm.
in asking those questions. But I think it's asking tough questions of customers.
Mm.
I mean, of the sales team, and asking tough questions about, hey, what happens when things go badly? So let's say this thing, yeah, I'm gonna sign a 5-year contract, but let's say we get it in year one, and it's painfully evident that our company has changed or the solution has changed and it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when things go badly? HR is not great at asking those types of prenuptial types of questions.
On the other
And
side of the coin, William, when you've got excited about a piece of technology, you like the
mhm,
founder, got your wee piece of sweat equity, um, and you're thinking, okay, now we've got a road market to market.
mhm.
Talk to me about what separates the good companies and the great ones when it comes to putting in that channel sales teams, and what like best practice looks like.
So best practices, for the companies that scale correctly, if you will, is it's three things. It's the three R's. It's referenceable clients. So it means the underpinning of that is they treat their clients well. Recurring revenue. So they've built a model that they can grow their MRR and ARR so that they become more stable over time. And the third is repeatable processes. Like, they're not reinventing the wheel. The bell rung. They sold a client. They're about to onboard a new client, and they've already got a checklist and a process and a bit that they then can model and audit and make it better over time. But they've got a model. They're not making it up every single time. So that's how you create that stability. Now, as it relates to just specifically sales, which is something that you asked about, I think sales, you reverse back out to what's the best for the customer and the prospect. So if I'm trying to reach the prospect, do I do it with BDRs? Do I do it with lead gen? Do I do it with field sales? Do I do it through the channel? Do they like calls? Do they like emails? Do they like texting? What are they going to respond to? You reverse that out back to, what do they respond to well? And then that's the process you build.
Mm.
So you don't force a model, and I think that's where you have some companies that kind of grow up through, hey, we're going to do direct sales, and this is just the way we're going to do it. We're going to build, a sales BDR, lead generation BDR, and a ton of salespeople with sales leadership, and we're just going to go direct. Up until the point where the prospects don't necessarily like that. Maybe they see you as a spoke and a much larger wheel, and you should really be connective tissue that's sold in a much larger situation. Then you've got the wrong sales strategy. Then you should be going through partnerships and going through as a spoke of a much larger wheel and selling that way.
Mm.
And so you reverse that out. You'll come to the table with a preferred model. The model is based on what makes sense for the prospects and the customers.
So a combination of all, depending on who the person is you're trying to reach.
I think you start with who the person is, so you know that, and then how do they like to be sold?
Okay.
What's their preference? And the thing is it isn't rocket science. You can actually find this stuff out pretty easily just by asking them.
Yeah.
Like we sell this thing, we'd like to sell it to you. How do you prefer to buy this? Like, it's background screening. It's a bit, and it's a different type of background screen, but do you like buying that as a part of a much larger screening philosophy? And if so, great, go partner with people that have the things that you don't have, and put a much larger deal in front of customers where you're a spoke.
So
But you just ask them.
I mentioned I interviewed Craig Fisher and Bill Borman already,
Yeah, yeah.
and they both said they've done a tremendous amount of traveling over the years,
Yep.
and the same faces on the circuit and in the
Yep.
speaking circuit. Is that going to change now with
100%.
what does
100%,
the
as it
future of
should.
conferences look like?
Well, I don't. It's rather bleak, in my opinion,
No.
because we've taught ourselves that on one level you can get same, similar, better content in a remote setting. Some people will lean on this. Well, we're humans, and we still want that human connection. I'm not so sure of that.
Hmm.
And I also think their conferences in general are very inefficient. I think if you put a better model together where you can put buyers and sellers together, it doesn't necessarily have to be in Amsterdam or in London.
But it's so much
So
fun, right? It's so much fun.
business travel is, for anyone that's done it, and those two guys have done it a ton as well. There's nothing sexy about business travel. I mean, it seems sexy, but there's nothing sexy about it. Now, that's being said, you're also at some generational shifts where there's a wave of new voices, as there always is, of people that want to travel.
Hmm.
They either want to get away from their situation, or they want to see the country, or they want to see the world, and they're willing to take a 14-hour flight to somewhere to speak on a bit because they
Yeah.
want to do it. I myself, I will evaluate post-COVID. I will evaluate speaking opportunities on one of two things. Either it's a place that I've always wanted to go to.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe I take my wife and kids and we do a bit, or there's a large check.
I think Bill said the
Right?
same.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, if I get both of those together, I'm going to
Yeah.
go to South Africa and go to Johannesburg, and
Yeah.
and they're going to give me a
Yeah.
large check. You know what? I'm doing that bit. I'm on that
Yeah.
flight. But
Yeah.
if it's
So is it the
and
end of
again,
the highwayman of HR
yes,
tech?
for me, when I started speaking, this is 2005, six, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
I talked to my wife about it before I even got down this path. I said, "Listen, I want to do this bit." Which means it's like a band. And when you start out in a band, it's basically anybody that'll take you, you go and play the gig. And that's what I explained to my wife. We were on vacation, and I said, "Listen, if 40 people in Topeka want me to come and speak about a bit, I'm on a flight to Topeka. Like, that's the bit. I got to go do the thing." Years later, after you've done that, you've been around the world, you've done all that stuff. I've been to Topeka. I mean, it's a cool place. Like, I don't no hate in my heart for Topeka, but I don't ever have to go to Topeka again
Mm.
in my life. I don't
Yeah.
ever have to visit there. And there's a lot of places I like. I mean, London. I mean, beautiful places. Amsterdam. I've been to Amsterdam 28 times.
Wow.
I don't ever have to go to Amsterdam again in my life. Now, again, if it's a big check, I'll go to Amsterdam. I mean, it's a flight to London and a short flight from London to Amsterdam.
Mm.
Great, done. I'll do the bit. But business travel for me is forever changed because of COVID.
All right. I've just done a wee bit of research beforehand. So the purchasing HR came up.
Hmm.
You've written some stuff on automation. What's your thoughts on that with the future of work?
Well, I think we need to automate the things that we're either not good at or that are just lower value tasks, right? So you've been in the staffing business, so you know that in years past we've had scheduling coordinators, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People that they spend their entire week scheduling all the different pieces of the candidate and the hiring manager and the team and this, that, and the other. Well, you know what? There's at least 20 different bots that can do that bit.
Yeah.
And so that's a low value task, and that should be automated. And so that frees us up to do some of the more higher value human things that
Like
we
this.
should be doing, like this.
Yeah.
And talking with candidates. Like, once they get to a certain point, it's like you've been through the conversational bot, you've been through the voice bot, you've already done a series of interviews, you got all the screens, you got all this stuff done. Let's just talk like humans now. You've
Yeah.
already made it to the certain point. What do you want to know?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to know about the company or the hiring manager or the team, or what do you want to know about me?
Yeah.
Like
That's the
now,
persuasion piece.
yes, well,
Do you
and
believe
both.
that'll remain?
Oh, good gosh, yes, and it's both ways.
Okay.
So candidates trying to persuade you,
Yeah.
you're trying to persuade the candidate, and if we've got some of that lower value task that's automated, it frees us up to be able to do that piece correctly.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to have a 15-minute call with you. Now I can actually have a 30-minute or 45-minute call with you and let the call go into places like
Mm.
really, really like, hey, listen, I'm not in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because I got all those lower value tasks already automated. I have time to actually talk to you. More importantly, I have time to field questions that you have.
Yeah.
And so it's Q&A, but it's really, as you already kind of got to, it is also persuading, it's persuading, and we're selling each other.
Yeah.
As a recruiter, I'm selling you. As a candidate, you're selling me, and we need to give that a little bit more time.
What's the most common debate you get into online?
It's historically it's been suite versus best of breed product. So do I want one technology that can do a lot of things, but maybe not well,
Like
or
Workday?
yeah, yes, 100%. Or do I want to, and it's becoming easier to then just say, no, I want best of breed and comp. I want best of breed. Okay, yeah, I'll take Workdays. Actually, I'll be a Workday client, but I want my ATS to be iSIMS.
Mm.
So iSIMS is then pulling data out, doing the workflow, pushing data back into Workday, and that's a good experience. They're having a great experience in iSIMS, but yet they're still getting the upside of Workday.
So the
So
integration's key in when it comes to that.
that's right. So those questions, that debate, I think is chicken and egg. It'll never go away
Yeah.
to some degree. But I think that, I think people right now talk a lot about the candidate experience, and which is fantastic. But just as much as it's the other types of experiences that you have, it's the sourcer experience, the
Yeah.
recruiter experience, the staffing person experience, the hiring manager experience, the onboarding experience. So it's thinking about experience and micro experiences in ways that we should be thinking about it, and not just candidates. I mean, candidates are important, but they're only one part of the equation.
And is there some kind of scoring mechanism software that's out there to make all that happen? Or
Not on all the experience. I think Surveil does a really good job with really understanding kind of where you are with candidates, but not. I don't think there's really anybody that's tackled all the experiences.
what products out there excite you?
Well, okay, so I just joined as an advisor of a company that were guys in the industry that had a company in ATS called Newton Software, and it was an ATS. They sold it, and years later, after doing some things, they got the band back together, and they wanted to do something around churn. And so they built a BI company that basically looks at all of your data with customers, and then it gives you indicators of flight, of customer unsatisfaction, of things that they're doing or not doing, and it red, yellow, greens it. I
Mm.
love that. I mean, I'm an advisor, so of course I'd say I love it, but
Yeah.
I love it. I love it because it's solving another part of the equation
Yeah.
that I've always found fascinating. I mean, that's why I spent 5 years of my life doing user adoption stuff. Is I love the idea of how do you fix churn?
Yeah. How would
Um,
you fix it in a staffing business? Because one and like it's like, well, you know what it is. It's
it's the same. It's the same thing. It's indicators. It's indicators of satisfaction and happiness, and it's indicators of the opposite.
Mm.
So, I mean, again, you're looking at staffing, you're looking at the same things that the corporate world is looking at. You're looking at price, quality, and speed. So the combination of price, quality, and speed. And if your customer is happy with price, quality, and speed, and they're giving you those signals, and you're listening to them, then your customer's happy, and then you can kind of check that off and know that they're happy with the equation and the relationship.
Yeah.
But it's when you don't listen and you don't hear that they're unhappy with the price, quality, and speed equation. You might be really fast, but the volume's not there, or the quality is not there.
Yeah.
So, like, listening and social listening and otherwise, I think it's the same thing with staffing. I don't think it's any different. I think it's being aware of what's driving them and making sure that they're both happy, but also understanding when unhappiness happens that you can fix it.
Mm.
You just
And
got to
tell,
listen.
and tell me, staffing world, are we in trouble? Are we going to get replaced by the computers?
No, not at all. No, I think
Bill Barman
I'm
had me terrified. I was going to just open up a coffee shop after my interview.
no, I think there's always a role for staffing because there's always positions that you can't, or for whatever reason, like, again, take a friend of mine who worked at Wayfair. This is in 19. He had to hire 1,000 software engineers.
Wow.
Okay. Now just imagine sourcing that and then getting the interviews and getting all that stuff. There's always going to be situations where there's the purple squirrels, the hard to finds, the high volumes, things that they're just not good at. I mean, when you look, I'm Nike, and we're really good at hiring designers, but we're terrible at hiring product marketers.
Hmm.
And over the course of time, we've just figured it out. We're just not great at that. Well, that's a great way to work with a staffing firm or an RPO, in a way of saying, we're going to outsource this because you're just better at it than we are.
Yeah, fair.
So I think there's always a role. I think there always should be a role for executive search, staffing, and RPO.
And just on the staffing front, when
Hmm.
like we're seeing like the great dispersion of California and New York,
Yep.
people are just hitting the road and they're going to sunnier pastures like your own good town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how does that look like from an advisor's perspective? What are you like? Are you just like telling people to hire people remotely, globally, or locally, or regionally? What is it like? This is all
Well,
happening in real time, right?
yeah. Well, first of all, I think, remote. If it comes down to your the values of the company, and what you want, but also what the talent wants. I think if you open up your aperture to people living anywhere in the world, and it's about the outputs, it's about the outcomes of the work, then I think you're putting yourself in a better position to win long term. Uh, I think you should live wherever you want to live. Like, this idea that there's hubs, that you have to live in New York, you have to live in Silicon Valley. Those were all kind of false, or walls, or false constructs. We didn't have to live there. A
No.
lot of people chose to live there. Now, if you choose to live in Tokyo or in San Francisco or whatever, great.
Mm.
You got a higher cost of living. But you shouldn't. I mean, it should be a personal choice, a family choice, things like that. You should live wherever the hell you want.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, you and I are talking about knowledge workers, not bank cashiers, or
Sure, absolutely.
people like that. But if you want to live anywhere in the world, you should live anywhere in the world.
Yeah. And so, final question:
Mhm.
three most inspirational people in HR tech,
Oh, good gosh,
and
there's so
why?
many. Yeah, there's so many. I mean,
You can name more than three.
yeah. Well, the two guys that you mentioned are two of them that I listen to: Martin Burns, George LaRock. I think John Sumser. I think all the analysts. So Madeline Morano and Trish McFarland, Molly Lombardi, all of those folks. So I like the inputs of people that have studied HR tech for a long time,
Yeah.
that can kind of see the waves and are not caught up in kind of the sizzle.
Yeah.
So Bill and Craig, Matt Charney, people like that they've seen the waves, and they can kind of distill through the waves and go, okay, here's what's real. But there's a whole list of people, uh, those that I've mentioned, and probably thousands that I haven't, that have looked at things and they're critical.
Yeah.
Like I don't like a lot of bubblegum type of analysis. I want someone to take it and go, here's the plus, here's the minus.
Mm.
And that's okay. Like we're adults. It's okay that there's pros and cons to this.
Where can people find you if they're
Just Google William Tincup. It's pretty easy.
I did that, you know.
Everything's out there. So I'm, for better or worse, I'm actually relatively easy to find.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. Really enjoyed the interview. I've learned lots. And hopefully, when we have a better understanding of this world, we can come back on and go into more depth in certain subjects.
Would love to. Absolutely love to. Thanks for having me on.